In this lesson, we're going to create the gun turret. Alright, so taking a look at the turret in our reference image here, it looks like we have kind of a half-cylinder sort of object here that is the mount, and then we have the gun barrels themselves, and then we've got kind of a decorative piece to kind of show that there's a pivot point in this gun turret. So let's go ahead and get started by creating a simple cylinder in our scene. I'm going to put it center right here at the base of the ship and extend that out. You'll see how that expands out to the same size there. And let's go ahead and make sure that we get our height. As you can see here, I'm dragging the mouse around and that number is still floating. So I need to click one more time to finalize that height. Alright, so this should be pretty close to being centered, well, on one edge at least here. Let's go ahead and adjust the height on it. Let's make that 10. And then I'm going to go ahead and move this back in the Z direction. Okay. So there we go. We've got this set up. We might make that a little bit wider. Let's go ahead and go to 16 on that and pull that over. So that looks pretty decent there. I'm going to hit L on the keyboard to go to my left view. Let's add in a height segment so that way it's right in the center, and that might make it a little bit easier to eyeball to make sure that this is perfectly center here. Okay, so now that we have this, the first thing that we need to do is we need to get rid of any extra geometry. So if I go to my front view by hitting F on the keyboard and then I hit F3 to go to wireframe, you'll see that I've got this geometry kind of up into the body here, and I don't necessarily need that. I'm also going to drag this up a little bit just so those vertices are inside the body. Alright, now what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to go to my shaded view by hitting F3, and I'm going to cut this cylinder in half. So I'm going to convert it to editable poly, and we're going to go ahead and cut from this vertex to this one. So let's go to vertex mode by hitting 1 on the keyboard. Okay, and then we're going to right click and cut from this vertex all the way across to this vertex. We'll right click to end that. You can hit F3 to see that cut there, and we'll do the same thing on this side. So we'll go from this vertex to this one, and then we'll right click to end, and then we're going to go to polygon mode by hitting 4 on the keyboard, and then we will select all those polygons and delete those. Okay, so if we hit F3 and go back to our shaded view, we can see that we have the beginning of our gun turret. Alright, now I'm going to split this turret base into 3 different parts. Okay, so I need 3 segments in here. So I'm going to go ahead and select this loop. So double click that edge and that will select that loop. And I'm going to chamfer this. And let's go ahead and chamfer it with 2 segments. So that gives me 3 segments. And then we're going to take our chamfer amount up. And I'm going to hit L on the keyboard just so I can see this. And I'm going to take this up to 4. Okay, and then hit OK. By taking that to 4, that's going to split that in half. If you'll remember, we made this 16. So each line here is 4 inches, or 4 units. Okay, so that comes up to 16 units across. Alright, so now that we have this, let's go ahead and select this center line as well. So I'm going to hold down Control and double click that edge, and then I'm going to chamfer these lines here. So let's go ahead and use chamfer, and let's take that chamfer amount down, and we're going to do just 1 segment on there, so we don't need anything in the center. And we're going to go ahead and chamfer this together. So we'll go to something around, let's do 1.2. That should give us enough room there. Alright, so what I need on this is going to be a turret that has 2 gun barrels on it. So I don't necessarily need to have this center set of polygons. So I can double click on this and double click on here and just hold down Control and backspace and get rid of those if needed. Now what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to go to polygon mode. I'm going to select this polygon, this one and this one. Okay, do the same thing on this side. And then I'm going to use inset to create kind of a rim here. So we'll go to 0.1 and I'll hit OK, and then I'm going to extrude this, and we're going to make sure that we extrude in a local normal direction, and then we're going to extrude that in a negative direction here. So that's going to create a crease that we need for our gun barrels to kind of hide in. So we'll take this back, we'll go to -2 here, and then I'm going to hit OK. So now I've created just kind of an inset for these barrels to go. Alright. So now what I need to do is go ahead and smooth this out. So let's use Turbo Smooth, and let's take our iterations up to 2, isoline display, and then we're going to go to Edge Mode, Show End Result, and then we will use Swift Loop just to create some very quick loops here. Now one thing that you're going to notice is that as I'm trying to create some loops across the front here, it's not going all the way through. And the reason that that is because our polygon, let's turn off Turbo Smooth, on the ends are not quads. So let's cut this directly in half here. So right click, cut, from this vertex up, and the same thing on this side. So we've taken a 6-sided polygon and we split it in half to 2 quads. Alright, good. So now let's go ahead and go back to Turbo Smooth, Editable Poly, and we'll use that Swift Loop, and now you'll see that it goes all the way through. So it's looking much better. So we're kind of making these edges nice and smooth here. Let's go on these outside edges here. Same thing here. There we go. And if you want to, you could go ahead and turn on Turbo Smooth or turn that off, and you can make some loops on the inside just to kind of tighten that up. Okay. Make that nice and hard there. Okay, so that looks good. And then we have some problems right in here. You'll see that this is very, very round. So we just need to add one segment right across that to really tighten that up. Okay. And I'm also going to do one right here. Okay. So you'll see that this kind of begins to square off some, and that's okay. If you want to, you could go ahead and keep that last segment off there. Keep that bottom flat. Okay. If you want to do that, you don't necessarily have to. Okay. Either way, it's up to you. Okay. So I like the shape that I'm getting here. Pretty happy with that. Let's go ahead and begin creating the actual barrels of the gun. So I'm going to build these out of cylinders, and I'm going to go to my front view and just create a very quick base for this gun barrel. And we're going to go to something like 8 on our height. We'll do a radius of 2. And I'm just going to move this into position right up here. And then I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees, right where it sits. So there's 90 degrees. And I'm going to pull this back into the turret base and position that. And you'll see that this is not quite fitting in there. That's penetrating a little bit too much. Well, I think that I need to change the width on this gap here. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go to polygon mode. And you'll see that those polygons are still selected. If not, go ahead and turn off Turbo Smooth and select those polygons there. And I'm going to use Grow, and this is going to grow our selection. And I want to grow it right out to this point right here. Okay? So these are the only polygons we should have selected. Alright, good. So now, let's go ahead and scale these apart. Okay? And, you know, looking at this, I don't know if I want to scale that, because what it's going to do is it's going to cause a little bit of skewing, and it could cause some issues. So one thing that you could do instead is go to your left view and select all of the vertices along the center just like so. And then let's scale those in. And that should make things a little bit easier. There we go. That's going to make that fit in there a lot easier there. Okay, I'm going to continue to scale those in. So scale that in the X. And then if you want to scale these apart, just to take these sides out, you can scale those away from one another. Okay, and you can do that as well. Alright, so now our cylinder is fitting in there nicely. And then I can just push that in. It's okay if that penetrates into our turret, just fine. I'm going to go ahead and change the height on that. So let's go to our front view. And I'm going to go ahead and take that up to 12. Let's take the height segments off there. And then let's convert this to editable poly. And I just want to round out the end, and I want to create just kind of an indentation for this cylinder to fit into, or the next one. So that's going to be the actual barrel itself. So let's inset to create a hole. So we'll do something at like 0.5. Hit OK. And then I'm going to extrude this out. So go to our front view, and we'll extrude that out to right about here. So 11.5. And actually, you know what? Let's go all the way out to the end of the gun. So let's go to 16. And then what I'll do is I'll go to edge mode, select these edges right here, and we're going to use connect, and I'm going to slide that right up to this point here. We'll hit OK, and then I'm going to select these edges. I'm going to use connect again, but I'm going to take my slide to 0 and then take my segments up to 2 and then pinch. There we go. So we'll go to 72 and we'll hit OK. With those still selected, let's grab our scale tool, and I'm going to scale these in all 3 directions, and it'll kind of create that flare that you see in that gun design. Alright, very good. So now that I have this, I've got this started, let's go ahead and create the hole that we need in the end of the barrel. So we're going to inset that one more time at 0.25. And then I'm going to extrude this in a negative direction. And you could go to something like -2, and we'll hit OK. Alright. Now while I'm here, I'm going to select every other polygon on this. And I'm going to use inset. And then I'm going to extrude in a negative direction. And I'm going to extrude those in -0.4. Oops. And hit OK. Let's do inset one more time, because we're going to be smoothing this out, so I just want to make sure that I have, well, let's go ahead and just leave it the way it is. It should be okay. Alright, so now that we have this, we've got the gun turret and we've got the turret base. I kind of feel like the gun barrel itself might be a little thick. So let me look at that. I think we're okay. So now what I want to do is I want to separate the barrel here from the base, so that way we can move it in and out freely for animation purposes. So I'm going to select all of these polygons, and then under the Edit Poly rollout, or Edit Polygons rollout, actually it's under Edit Geometry, I'm sorry, you'll see Attach and then Detach. If I hit Detach, it's going to ask me to detach it as an object, and we're going to say gun underscore barrel and hit OK. So now these are 2 different objects here. Let's make this gun base, and then we'll make this turret base, and there we go. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's apply Turbo Smooth to all of these. Okay, And on this one, I'm going to go ahead and go to Edit Polygon Mode, and we're going to cut this. Let's take this up to 2, and then Isoline Display. Now you'll notice that Turbo Smooth here is in italics. Whenever you select multiple objects and you apply one modifier, they're all tied to one another. So with Turbo Smooth, I've always been taking the iterations up to 2 and then checking Isoline Display. So everything has been those same values on everything, so you might as well just select everything and apply one Turbo Smooth. So that way it can be controlled on all objects. So if you want to make that modifier unique, you can just simply select it and then hit Make Unique. Okay. Alright, so with that I'm going to Editable Poly Mode, and I'm going to use Swift Loop, and I'm going to start to make some cuts on here and just kind of get my volume back. Okay, so here we go, getting that volume back in our weapon. Looking good. And then we might make one right here on the inside just to kind of harden that up there. And one on the very end just to really square off that rifle barrel or gun barrel. Alright, that looks good. I'm going to place one more right here just to make sure that that's really sharp. Let's select this object. Whoops. Try this one more time. Now let's go to Editable Poly, Edge Mode, and let's do the same thing here. Here we go. And this looks pretty good. I think we are ready to go now. Alright, so now that we have this, let's take a look at our turret real quickly. I've added 2 different Turbo Smooths. Let's go ahead and delete that top one and then activate the regular Turbo Smooth that we had with it. So now all we have to do is just copy this gun over to here, and now we've got 2 of those, and those are now modeled. So now all we'll have to do is we'll have to set up some pivots for those guns there. And in our next lesson, what we're going to do is we're going to create the accessory piece, the pivot point that you see on that gun turret, and we'll kind of show you a different way of creating that. Okay, and I'll see you then.